Thank you, Bruce. Well, as most of you probably know, my wife and I have 3 little boys, 2 of whom are still in diapers. So, I'm curious, by a show of hands, how many of you enjoy changing dirty diapers? Raise your hand if you enjoy. No takers? No? All right, well, that's not surprising too much. It's not a pleasant task, is it? It's often messy, it smells, it's just not much fun. And because of that, you're in luck today. I have great news for you. I have discovered the final and ultimate solution to this problem. Okay? And because of this breakthrough in my life, I have not changed a diaper in months. I can't even remember the last time. In fact, I probably never will again. Would you like to know my secret? Yeah, I bet you would. And now when I tell you this secret, you'll be amazed because the solution is so simple and so elegant, you'll wonder why you never thought of this yourself, okay? But here it is. When one of my boys has a dirty diaper, I just put a new one on over the old one, you know. Problem solved, right? It's great. It's especially effective on those particularly messy diapers, and you know what I'm talking about, right? You just put a new diaper on over the old one. It's much easier, it's much faster, and there's no messy cleanup. I should do infomercials. Now, I hear you laughing, and I suspect that's because you know that that's not true, right? That I don't do that, and neither do you. In fact, it wouldn't probably even occur to you to do something so ridiculous. The reason you wouldn't think to do that is because it's not only ineffective, it's actually counterproductive. Because if you were actually to apply a fresh, clean, dry diaper over an old, dirty one, well, that doesn't really solve the problem at all. It actually only compounds the problem. Because all you've done is simply concealed the problem only for a little while, right? The baby may look good, but the baby don't smell good, you know. There's still a problem, isn't there? And what will happen is the baby will get a very bad diaper rash. Eventually, the new diaper as well as the outside clothes will get soiled. And the child, in the meantime, will be absolutely miserable and will make everyone else around him absolutely miserable. Now, in case you're wondering, where in the world is he going with this? Here's where I'm going with this. That our lives, when we come to Jesus Christ, we bring a life to Jesus that's a lot like that dirty diaper. Our hearts are messy. Our lives stink. And everything we touch gets contaminated. You see, when you're changing a diaper, you can't just put on a new one unless you take off the old one first. And the same is true in changing our hearts and our lives. We can't just put on Jesus unless we take our old life off first. We cannot clothe ourselves with Christ without first stripping off the old, filthy rags that we used to wear. And so this is the image, this is the metaphor that Paul uses in today's passage in Colossians chapter 3. He actually uses the same imagery in 2 other letters in the New Testament. This image of taking off the old and putting on the new. So you'll look with me in verse 9. I'm in Colossians chapter 3. And let's pick it up in verse 9, where he really starts to use this metaphor. He says, "Do not lie to each other, since you have taken off your old self with its practices and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge in the image of its creator." So there it is again, this idea of taking off the old, discarding the old life and getting rid of the filthy rags and putting on the new life, putting on Jesus and his new nature. And so we see this 2-step process. The first step is in verses 5 through 9, and that's to take off the old filthy clothes. They have to go. The old life must be discarded. We have to throw it away. It's no good. And he uses this analogy, this metaphor, and that the old clothes, some of the articles of clothing that are old are things like sexual immorality. He lists them. Sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, greed, which he identifies as idolatry. anger, rage, malice, slander, filthy language, lies. And of course, that's only a partial list of the kinds of things that we used to be clothed with before we came to Christ. That's all got to go. And then, of course, the second stage, the second step is to put on Christ, to put on these new clothes. And he talks about that in verses 10 through 17. And some of the articles of this new clothing are things like compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, patience, forgiveness, love, peace, and gratitude. Again, a partial list of the kinds of things that Paul calls us to put on in Christ. So again, Paul is saying this old life, it's disgusting, they're rags, they're gross. You've got to get rid of that old life. It must be discarded. You must rid yourself of that old life, and you must put on the new. And he speaks so urgently, it makes me wonder why. What is so important about taking off the old and putting on the new? Why is that so vital? Well, perhaps I could explain it perhaps a little better through illustration. So I'd like you to imagine for a moment that you are a prisoner, all right? And you have been in prison for years. You've been serving time at a federal penitentiary for as long as you can probably remember. All right? And every day you wear the same thing, as do all the other inmates. You wear a bright orange jumpsuit, okay? And you don't maybe necessarily like it, but you've worn it for so long that you're used to it now. And then one day, out of the blue, completely unexpected, you receive a visitor. And this visitor is a federal agent. And this federal agent comes bearing an official document, a government document, and it's read to you. You discover that it is a full pardon signed by the President of the United States himself. And you are pardoned effective immediately. You are free to go. You are a free man. You are a free woman starting now. You didn't see this coming. You're shocked. You're amazed. This is like the best day of your life so far, but it gets better. He didn't just bring a paper documenting your pardon. He brings a paper offering you an invitation. The invitation is to come to be the special personal guest of the president at a state dinner in Washington, D.C. tonight.